A big update where, at least for now, there's been a lot of talk about whether or not athletes at schools would become employees. It doesn't seem like that's the route we're going, at least for the time being.
Yeah, so per multiple sources, the Trump administration has terminated NLRB General Counsel Jennifer Abruzzo, widely considered one of the most union-friendly people in modern U.S. history, to serve in the role. That's from Lauren K. Gurley. And what does that do? Well, Ross Dellinger breaks it down for us. The expected ouster of Abruzzo, a leader in the movement to have college athletes become employees, has arrived. And one of the articles, FisherPhillips.com, that I've read from says that Jennifer Abruzzo took another big step a couple of years ago in continuing the saga surrounding college sports by filing a complaint seeking to have student athletes classified as employees under the National Labor Relations Act. So if you first, let's start here, TJ. Those are three tweets and articles that I just pulled up. Does that make sense? Is it easy to derive where we're if you're a college athlete, you're losing the number one person who's trying to represent you to become an employee?
I mean, it's not great, but also, I guess a speculative point of this is I don't know that Trump removed her for this reason. I don't know how much he actually cares. So the next person very much could kind of have the same view on this specific topic. I don't think Trump made this decision with the NCAA in mind. Could have, right? I'm not speaking for him. He does enough of that on his own. But I do think that the next person that gets in to maybe play the devil's advocate could think the same way on this and then very differently on the reasons why Trump removed her. Trump didn't put out a tweet yet that I've seen on why he moved on. And so it's not all bad, I guess, but it's just a kind of a TBD. But at least the person that has been so vocal about it won't be. And so you'd imagine that probably the next person has some differences of opinions. But there's a chance.
And you're spot on here. I don't think that an administrator looked at the Abruzzo woman and said, you know what, you're done because you want college athletes to be employees of the university. I'm sure there are so many different things at play here. But that being paramount for what we've come to the table for, it shows that if I'm a junior at Syracuse and my school doesn't really do NIL and I want to be an employee of the university and make money and have revenue sharing, that might not happen. And TJ, I think the question becomes this. What we all have to decide, and I want to know your thoughts too, what we all have to decide, are we fans of student athletes being a W-2 employee of a university, or are we fans of NIL continuing to be as it is and the university is keeping their own dollars out of it? That becomes the question, because with this move, it seems as though we're inching further away from students being actual employees of their university, a la NFL style.
Not to go so political here, but I think there's pros and cons to both. Right. And so
play both sides. Do it.
Right. I'm going to do it. But I think what is ultimately best, maybe for college football, is for them to be employees. Maybe that would fix a little bit of our NIL craziness that we've got going on. Maybe that we're able to, tear some of that back, peel some of that back, that we've opened Pandora's box, to use all the cliches, and kind of bring some semblance back to college football. I do think there's some pros from that. Ultimately, it would give the athletes, employees, some benefits, some health benefits, some things that they're not currently getting. I mean, I don't know if you ever worked a W-2 job versus a 1099 job, if you're out there listening, but there are some benefits to being 1099. You usually get paid a little bit more, but there are some security benefits to being an employee. You're given certain protections, some legal protections by being an employee that the schools, let's be real, don't want to pay. That's why they're not employees, because the schools don't want to pay that at this moment. And so I think there are some pros, some cons. Ultimately, though, I don't think that schools, one, want to do this. Two, I don't think that the NCAA wants this by any means. And so ultimately, this is probably bad for the athlete, bad for college football in general, good for the schools, good for the people that are holding all the power and all the money, kind of like college football has always been. So again, very political, but I think it's pros and cons both ways.
You played it down the middle beautifully, TJ, and you used Pandora's box as well. Looking at something like this, I think of a Jamie Pollard, who's the athletic director at Iowa State, who's not very well known across the country as an AD, right? We talk about the Bubba Cunninghams who have served on major boards or been a part of the college football playoff committee. That's not the case for Pollard. He's a guy who's very blue collar, comes out and says, hey, we're in Ames. We had to put building projects, additions to our stadiums, whether it be Hilton or Jack Trice on hold because we're now worried that students will become employees of our universities. And if that becomes the case, I don't know if we can afford that as much as an Ohio State could to pay their players as a part of their university. And Linda Livingstone, the president at Baylor, who is she's the chair of multiple different committees, has asked the question, where does Title IX fit into this? Are you paying a volleyball player the same amount as a football player? And if you're not, how does Title IX factor into that? So what will answer a lot of those questions very easily is by saying, hey, we're just not going to do it anymore. And the person who's spearheading this, like you said, someone else could step into this role and also spearhead it. But if you're asking your run-of-the-mill guy from Birmingham, Alabama, hey, do you want collegiate athletes to get paid? I mean, and college football is a primarily Southern sport. We've seen that with the SEC winning, 15 of the last 17 national championships, 18 national championships. When we pose those questions to your run-of-the-mill college football fan, they're probably going to answer with, I don't want those students to be, sure, let them get paid, but I don't want them to be actual employees of the university. That ruins the integrity of what college football is. I can only imagine that whoever steps into this role will not be as vocal about athletes becoming employees. And TJ, if we're going to hold on to what we love about college football, maybe that does push us in the right direction, back into the right direction. And again, I want to reiterate what you said. You kind of remove all politics from this. It's just someone who's on the forefront at the government level of having student athletes being employees is no longer at the government level. And that's going to change a lot of who is involved in these conversations and where these conversations go.
Yeah, and I think about as we get closer and closer to the professionalism of college football, which we all hate. Nobody wants that. Pro leagues have done a phenomenal job of navigating this. I mean, you have some lockouts, you have some things, but that's a very uncommon thing. And while I agree with you, I don't love the idea of them being employees. I think there are some benefits that the athletes get, that the students get in some regards. But then I also think that maybe this unpalatable thing that we don't really want. I agree with you. Just Jed in Birmingham has the same opinion as TJ in Tampa. I don't really love it, but could it kind of fix some of the issues we have? Because again, I don't want college football to be the NFL, even though it's moving closer and closer to that. But the NFL is really freaking successful. They do a really good job from an organizational standpoint. And could that somewhat fix some of the issues we have now? Again, it is very much a question mark because we don't know what's coming with a new appointee. We don't know what's coming with, even just the House settlement. Does that, I mean, it seems like that gets signed. That seems like it's going the right way, but who even knows? And then on top of that, let's say they are employees. Let's say they all get paid the same. Let's say there is a revenue difference. Not every professor at a school gets the same, right? There's some tenure things that go into it. So there would probably be some built-in protection so that the volleyball girl doesn't get as much as Jeremiah Smith or whatever. But if that's the case, are you then seeing the cap plus, or are you still seeing outside marketing deals kind of come in, collectives be able to do so? I said all that to say maybe it fixes things, maybe it doesn't fix things.
Yeah, right.
Maybe collectives still kind of say, employees, whatever. Jeremiah Smith, here's $5 million. So I don't know. Maybe it doesn't fix anything. Maybe it does, but it is certainly intriguing to see how this kind of pans out.
It sure is. I think we should start looking at NIL and the transfer portal first for how we can regulate where college football is going. And if you do find the NFL format, you're probably looking at UNC trying to go to the SEC. Florida State trying to go to the Big Ten. You're looking at schools that will want to say, hey, if we're going to consolidate, let's do it from a league standpoint as well. So like you said, I mean, with a move like this where you make them employees or you don't, you're gonna tug everybody in one direction or the other. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't. Most of what college football has done the last few years has not. We'll see where it goes.